Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sid's Foodcast, the food podcast where me and my guests talk about food, our love for food, and everything in the name of food. This is your host, Sid, and welcome to the show. For today's episode, we have Jona, aka Backpacking with the Book, where we talked about her food stories while backpacking, Vietnam's great eats, and why she chose to stay in Vietnam. I hope everyone will enjoy the show.
I'm already recording this. I always have a separate introduction of things.
Intro, okay.
Yeah, but I always want to start with what was your last meal before this podcast?
Oh, I had soy. Soy is
Soy.
Vietnamese sticky rice, and they have a lot of varieties. Um, and our school cafeteria has it. Um, the one we have is the turmeric one. So they put colors in their sticky rice, and these are all organic. So this one, the rice was yellow because they put turmeric powder, or they cooked it with turmeric, and they added. I just saw it today because it was freshly cooked rice, and they added a bit of I forgot the Vietnamese word, mắm tôm, like fish sauce, like patis.
Mm-hmm.
So a bit of fish sauce, and then they would in my case they always have it with pate, like duck
Mm-hmm.
duck liver and heart, like paste.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that one, so they just have the like pork sacho. It's like cured pork, and it has also pork, like very tiny pork strips, like a kind of bonito flakes, but pork. And also the Vietnamese ham, sliced Vietnamese ham, and a big dose of uh, deep fried garlic flakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I had
Oh,
for
and
brunch.
that's a lot to take in. I'm just
It's a
imagining
very tiny bowl, but with a lot of toppings.
yeah. Is your
Mm.
school an international school, I would assume?
I would not call it an international school. It's like a school with by curriculum. So we have two curriculums. So
Mm.
most of our students are really Vietnamese or have Vietnamese blood, not expat kids.
Oh, okay.
So we have two curriculums. So we are one of the very few schools uh, that have two curriculums. So we have the Vietnamese curriculums and we have the Cambridge curriculums.
Oh,
So the students are over
oh, okay.
tested. So there are two
Oh.
set of teachers, there are two sets of grades and exams. So our kids are like, yeah, they are,
Oh. Oh,
they are
I
crazy.
asked that one because just assuming with the food, because when you mention these few ingredients, I wouldn't kind of associate them with Vietnam in a way when you mention turmeric or when you
Oh
mention
no, they use turmeric.
bonito flakes. Yeah,
But no, no,
that.
no, not bonito flakes. It's more like I don't know the Vietnamese words. It's very common, like really cottony pork
Like
strip.
pork
Yeah,
floss.
yeah, yeah. There you go, pork
Oh.
floss. They put it in everything. Not everything. Yeah, certain food. They have it in their bread. They have it in, yeah, sticky rice toppings.
We should have that a lot more. But yeah, but again, this is just coming out of some sort of outsider perspective of
Oh,
Vietnam. And for people who are listening to this, um and I guess you may have clicked on this podcast because you might be interested in what it's like to live in a
yeah.
different country, specifically in Vietnam. And I, for one, Vietnam has been one of my top destinations that I wish I would go
Mm, for food.
specifically for food because there's just a lot to. talk about with Vietnamese food, but that's why I have my guest here today, and we could get some sort of an idea firsthand. And it's different because if it's different if you talk to a native, like,
Yeah,
a person
Vietnamese.
from who's from that country, but
Mm,
you are not from the country, but you've lived there in a substantial amount of time. So I guess
yeah.
your perspective from being a Filipino outsider to someone who
Mm,
actually stayed in Vietnam for quite a few years already is an interesting point of view. But I will first let you introduce yourself, and can you tell us who you are and what you do and why are you in Vietnam?
Hi. I'm Jonah. I'm a poet. Used to be a travel writer. I still have a travel blog, but I haven't updated it for a while. Um, yeah, these days I mainly write poetry, and I've been in Hanoi, Vietnam for the past 3 years. I teach social science. I teach global perspectives. It's a branch of social science that deals with global issues and um, academic writing and research. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I guess you may be living the life that I would think that I would have, but not in a bad way or in a good way, but
You should move here.
because I'm here in the United States. I am a teacher, but I'm not teaching here. I work as a medical technician.
Mm,
I write poetry. I perform spoken word. But if I imagine my life would be, if I could dictate what my life would be, it would be not necessarily in Vietnam. I could be anywhere. But I would
mm,
love to teach social science. I would love to teach history. That's why
mm,
I just love stories and culture. But my school, USJR, does not um is not they don't have any social science degree. They don't
mm.
teach. There's no bachelor's in
There's
history.
San Carlos has anthropology.
Sadly, I didn't know about that one when I was back in school.
Sorry. Yeah, I know one of two writers who graduated from the anthropology program.
Oh yes, and again, I just chose. It was back in my previous podcast. I chose education and majored in English because it's, I guess, the closest thing that I could have when it comes to learning about people, because we can definitely learn people through stories.
Yeah,
And
you can have a lucrative career in Vietnam if you have an education degree and then your major is English.
yes, and that is what I have. But sadly, I'm in an English-speaking country, such as in the United States.
You're living in the United States, it will be easy for you
Yeah.
to move to a country that needs the language. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, and that's one part of it. And being a poet, I have performed spoken word with a lot in a lot of places, but now I am in the 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 battling stages of page poetry, which is a whole different field, the whole
Mm,
different ball game when it comes to spoken word. And I've
yeah.
I've I've applied almost 5 and 6 times to send my poems, and I still have 5 and 6 rejections, and I'm still counting. So
That's part of success there. Don't count them as failures.
yeah, I mean, at least I the act of giving away my poetry and sending it to all
Yes,
these
yeah, that's
poetry
great
journals
enough.
is
Yeah,
part of it. But
yeah.
one aspect that I can definitely control is when it comes to food, because food
Mm,
is everywhere. But
mm,
food in Vietnam is something that would definitely love to try, because I've
mm,
heard stories, of the food in Vietnam. But again, these are just from YouTube videos and from my friends who went to Vietnam for 4 to 5 days. So they
mm.
may have the taste of Vietnam, but not necessarily, the understanding and what goes around. So I do have some sort of knowledge about it, but it's just from stories from friends and YouTube. But now,
Mm,
yeah. So why one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to talk to you about is because you are in Vietnam, living in Vietnam, eating
eating Vietnamese food
eating
every
Vietnamese
day.
food, but also coming from the thoughts of a person who lives there in a substantial amount of time, but also as a writer as well. Not as like a chef, or not as not as someone who's in the field of culinary arts, but just a person who wants to appreciate food.
Mm,
That's why it makes it really exciting for people who are listening to this. This is really exciting. But I guess I want to my first question would be, why Vietnam when
yeah.
you
Food
moved?
has a big part of it. All right, so I've been asked this a lot. I forgot what 2016. Yeah, 2016. I traveled around for a year, and but before that, like a year before that, I visited Vietnam once. But it was a very short trip. You know, the usual
Mhm,
4 or 5 days
mhm.
trip, and it was mainly in Hoi An, which is in the central part, Hoi An and Da Nang, and it's the central part of the country, and it's a UNESCO um, village. So it is very popular. It's beautiful. Food is great, but it was very short. And then 2017, no, 16 or 17, went back here, traveled the entire south and the entire north of Vietnam, and stayed for another 2 months to volunteer as a teacher and see if, because I had a background of teaching back home already, and see if it is something that I can do here. And back then I was still a full-time digital nomad, and the internet connection here is way much better than back home and way cheaper. And food is great. And I already had a circle of friends, like friends back home that relocated here like 2 or 3 years before I did. So I already had an instant circle.
That's
And
awesome.
yes, so
At least you have someone to go to and ask.
yeah, just in case, yeah.
Mhm.
So when after my year-long trip, the last destination was in Bali. I was there for a month, and instead of going back in the Philippines, I decided I still have a bit of savings for my trip. Decided to just fly here instantly. Even booked you know, a studio apartment
Oh.
beforehand. I checked it and paid the deposit, and I said like, all right, let's just say stay for 6 months. And then 6 months was over. Let's have 6 more months. 3 years after,
That's
two
awesome.
cats after, hundreds of plants after, I'm still here. So that's the story.
And
and
that
and and food, I think, is a huge part of it. I would say that the Vietnamese food is very close to the Filipino taste.
I see.
Maybe not as I mean, not in terms of the amount of salt that we put in our but the taste profile,
I
except for
see.
maybe the use of cilantro. They love cilantro here, and a lot of dill. Like different dishes comes with different types of herbs. There's so many herbs here that, and so many things, so many vegetables that we just ignore back home. We have them back home, but we don't eat them. But here, so I hated cilantro back then.
Oh.
It's because of Vietnam that I learned to love it. So it's like my banh mi, the
Uh-huh.
Vietnamese banh mi.
Oh, I love
I before, when I see a strip of cilantros
you
like
would remove it.
leaves, I would just like remove them. Or if and they also put that in, yeah, fuga, or like different types of soup.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's just like something is missing if you don't have it in your banh mi or in your soup. So yeah, food is really good. I mean, and also the most popular food in Vietnam from the outsider point of view is like phu bo or phu ga. My pronunciation sucks, so I'm sorry to my Vietnamese friends. It's such a difficult language, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
There's so many
But
places.
when I think of Vietnamese food, okay, because my first encounter of Vietnamese food was, I guess, in Cebu. I
Really,
try,
do
yeah.
they have a legit one?
I That's why I wouldn't know, because my I've only tried Vietnamese food in Cebu and in the United States. And then
Nah.
so I wouldn't know, right? But we always go to Little Saigon here,
Ah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
love Little Saigon because it's super fresh, it's cheap, and it's good.
How much is it? A bowl of pho.
Bowl would probably $4, $5. No, that's too cheap. So probably $5 to $7, like that.
That would be 250 pesos.
Yeah.
200 to 300. Oh, that's a lot. Yeah.
Hmm.
Here, a good bowl is 70 pesos. A dollar.
Really?
Dollar
And
and a half. Yeah. Like a huge one that has lots of meat and everything. Yeah. So
and
I live, I moved to a new area 3 months ago. And this area is called the food paradise.
wow,
So when
because
you step out, there's a football, there's a buncha, there's the different type. What was this? Bombo way, and there's the different place, and you just dip it in what's this? A kind of shrimp paste.
Mhm.
What's the name of that one? Forgot. You know, Vietnamese food is so different, difficult to pronounce. So yeah, I live in an area that has a lot of local restaurants, and I live outside the expat bubble. So food is way cheaper.
And that's one of the main things that people would say about Vietnamese food. You know,
Mm.
it's delicious, it's cheap, and there's just a lot of incorporated vegetables. Like there's always going to be vegetables
Yeah,
one
yeah,
way
it's
or
impossible not
another.
to have vegetables. Even their Jollibee here, the Jollibee. I don't know how long Jollibee has been here, but I think there are two branches of Jollibee. Their brand of Jollibee has vegetables. They have vegetable soup.
You see, that's maybe one difference that we have in the Philippines about Vietnam,
Yeah.
because for them it's essential to have vegetables. But my next question
Okay,
would be
can we
how,
go that way? I have an interesting theory why we always have vegetables here,
yeah, sure.
but oh, we don't have any. So Vietnam is a country of rivers.
Hmm.
So from north to south, they have access to fresh water. So vegetable growing here is a lot easier. It's a country of uh, agricultural industry. That's the backbone of the country, and it's in their blood to grow. And we live in an archipelagic country, so we're surrounded by salt water.
Yeah.
And what the what's this the vegetable baskets are in north of Luzon and also in the south of Cebu. So when it comes to supplying vegetables for the entire country, it's like the logistics and the price
Right.
involved is just too expensive. Like vegetables in the Philippines are expensive,
That's
so
true.
I think that's one of the reasons why we don't really have that kind of affinity with
Mhm.
vegetables when it comes to our dishes in especially street food because they are so expensive. It
That's
just
true.
doesn't make sense. While here, oh my god, it's so cheap,
Hmm.
so
Oh,
cheap.
I didn't think about that way. Right, because the Mekong Delta, mm,
from
I
north to
guess.
south. From
Hmm.
China, there's a Red River, and it just goes to Mekong Delta, connects to Mekong Delta. So
That's
they have an oversupply of fresh water. That's why also they have a problem when it comes to monsoon season. So during typhoon season in the Philippines, it's
mhm.
flood season in Vietnam. So right
Oh,
now in central part of the country, yeah, it's inundated with water. So a
that's
lot of so there's overflooding, but that's beyond the point. The point is that they have a lot of vegetables because they have areas to grow and they have the water that can irrigate. Is that the
yeah.
word? Is that a word? Irrigate, irrigate. Yeah,
Irrigate.
yeah. Irrigate
Irrigate.
the farms. Is that a
And
verb?
and it's easily, yeah, again, it's the accessibility
Mm,
to create such farmlands, to
mm,
plant and cultivate everything. That's
yeah,
definitely true, right? And it makes it cheaper thus.
yeah.
And I
And
guess
also Vietnam, when it comes to opening up to the world, they're fairly new. So that's also the reason why there's a lot of expats here teaching. We don't have that, like expats
mhm,
going to the Philippines to teach, because there's
you
no
don't need
demand.
to.
There's no demand
I don't know.
for them. Yeah, we already have everything.
Yeah.
So, but Hanoi, for example, has changed a lot. 10 years ago, I've heard that before there were just rice fields. The first batch of teachers from the Philippines who came here 10 years
Mhm.
ago or 15 years ago, they thought they were in the countryside
But
because
they're already in Ho Chi Minh. I don't know, I mean,
it was a
Hanoi.
city. It's like
Yeah.
Hanoi or Ho Chi
Yeah.
Minh, but it was just like rice fields after rice fields, vegetable fields after vegetable fields. So, but it has changed a lot in the span of 10 years. So skyscrapers are like slowly, gradually sprouting here and there. So maybe they will have the same problem 20 years from now.
As in the
No,
Philippines.
no more land for vegetables.
Maybe the
Yeah,
vegetables would increase in price. We don't know.
true,
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
But how would you describe Vietnamese food back then when you were still new and right now
When
compared
I
to?
was
Yeah.
traveling.
Mm,
Back then when I was, for example, when I was traveling, it was quite different. Like from north to south, they always have specialties. Um, so wherever you go, you will try something new. I mean, football and fuga, they're everywhere. But there's, I think, the biggest meat here as well is duck meat, because
mm,
again it has a country of rivers
mhm.
and lakes, so they always have this waterways to raise ducks. So there are hundreds, thousands of ducks wherever you go, especially when you go outside the city. And food at first was good but different in a way that sometimes you overwhelm your mouth with the taste. Like, and
Overwhelming in a good way or in a
sometimes in mostly in a good way, but
like you're
the
not just
hardest
familiar?
yeah, but the hardest thing to dehome is your tongue. Like you always
Mm,
want the taste, the exact taste of home.
mhm,
And even though I said that Vietnamese food is the range of Vietnamese food is very close to our palate, it's still very distinctively Vietnamese and not
mhm.
Filipino. So I gained a lot of weight when I first came here because I just kept on eating and eating, hoping that I would taste home. And second year, like finally gave up. Like, nah, this is Vietnam. It has
Yeah.
its own quirks when it comes to
Mhm.
food. And if I want to have Filipino food, I better make them myself. So,
You just have to
but
embrace
it's
it.
good. And also, I learned to go beyond the usual food. Like for an outsider, it's either you have fuga, fubo, or fried rice
Mhm.
and nem, the spring rolls.
Mhm.
But oh my god, the Vietnamese, the range is just so broad that every day you can have different dishes. So my favorite, especially in winter, is bombowe, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a kind of noodles, very thick noodles, and it has, blood gel, pork
Oh,
blood
like
gel. It
pork.
has, yeah,
Oh,
it has the Vietnamese meatballs. It has the Vietnamese ham, and it has the like pork knuckles, which is like the best, and I leave it
so
for that.
good. Oh my
So
God.
good, and
And
it's
you
like
eat
you
it
just
during like
slurp.
a cold day.
Yeah, like cold
That's so
night, and you just
comforting.
by the street, and they just slurp you
Oh,
away.
that's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
comforting. But because when I wanted to ask you that, because the familiarity we have, I guess, or for the world would be just the banh mi's and the pho, and that's
Mm-hmm.
about it. But
Mm-hmm.
but now you told me about even just the bowl of pho. There's just a lot of varieties of it depending on
Yeah, and
where
it's
you
not
are.
even called pho. It depends on what type of noodle they're using. It
Oh,
depends on what kind of meat are in there. So I get, I lost track of the kind of noodles that they have here.
but there's
And
just a
there are
lot.
also like noodles that is, you dip the noodles like buncha. You have
Hmm.
grilled pork. It's like grilled meatballs or pork strips, and they put it in a separate bowl, like not even a big one, with a kind of sauce that has slices of papaya and carrots, and then
Hmm.
there is a separate plate of cold vermicelli noodles, and you just dip this into the sauce with the meat and put herbs and whatever seasoning you want to have, and that's
That's
one of
just
my
so
favorite things
good.
to do.
Yeah, but when we think, and I guess that's just one of the greatest things that you could ever experience when it comes to going to Southeast Asian countries, because the street food is just so good. Plus, just the
Mm,
price as well. But
mm.
what about the nightlife? What about drinking? Is that
Oh,
something that's really how is it there?
there's a huge difference between Hanoi and Saigon. Saigon is the party capital, yeah, and is
Hmm.
way more modern compared to Hanoi. Hanoi, to some extent, like for example, I live outside the expat bubble, so everything closed by midnight. By
Oh,
default, everything closed by midnight.
if no
But
expats, they would just close.
yeah, because this area is that
No one would come.
where I live is not where the expats are. The expats live near West Lake, the biggest lake in Hanoi, and that's where a few, um, that's the party scene. But that's it. That area alone. And for for example, I have so many friends that are into partying, and the thing that when it comes to party scene, Saigon has more options. So because in Hanoi, that's the only area,
Mhm.
but in Saigon is from District 1 to District
There's a
11.
lot because it's
There's a
the cap.
lot, like the
Mhm.
whole city, and not just a district in the city. But here, since Hanoi is more, I would say, communist, and still Hanoi thrives. No, so still tries its best to be as old as possible. So there's
Mhm.
always a fight between
There's a
modernity and,
clash. Hmm.
yeah, there's a clash between the old ways and the modern ways, and it's also very interesting to look at and observe every day. But yeah, I know my water holes.
You know where you get mix.
Yeah, I know where to get my gin tonics. They also have spoken words in some bars here.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
and yeah,
awesome.
yeah. There used to be like every week back then, like 2 years ago, but now it's like once a month in
See.
some places. Yeah.
That's really interesting and makes me wanna go to Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, and everywhere in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess one of my last questions that I want to ask is not necessarily about Vietnam, but you as a
Mm,
person who traveled a lot.
mm,
Um, when it comes to eating and traveling, do you have, hopefully after this COVID thing, there would be people would be allowed to travel again,
mm.
and what would be your word of advice or tips for traveling and eating? Because you would always have to, you know, experience this. You would always have to eat somewhere. You're not just gonna have McDonald's for the rest of your
Yeah,
trip,
true.
and
It's
so
poor.
yeah.
Eat what people eat. When I travel, I gain a lot of weight actually, because even though I'm not hungry, when I walk, I love walking, and they go together, like walking a lot and eating a lot. Because when I walk and I see something new, I haven't tried this one. I just had lunch.
And it's for the sake of experience.
Yeah, so just eat whatever the locals are eating. And I advise that eat the ones that you can find on the street.
Are you the ones
Um,
who kind of research stuff first before
I
going
don't.
to places?
The older I get, I don't do that anymore. I
Oh,
prefer the organic way of finding.
oh, that's interesting.
And also, the information that you can find online are oversaturated more often than not. I mean, even though I vlog and I just genuinely prefer going out for a walk and randomly try stuff that I find along the way, especially if there is a lot of locals, sitting on their tiny stools by the street, enjoying their food, and the very scene makes me curious of what they're eating, and I would join the crowd.
that's that's an interesting take because I guess I don't have that yet. I would definitely look. I'm definitely
You
adventurous
have
with
like a
food.
list of places to go based
Yeah,
on.
yes, I definitely am adventurous with food. I would try everything, but I will definitely look into it and look, oh, what are the good spots in this place, so that when I go there, I know where specifically where to go and what
Ah,
to
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
But
Ah,
what
so you
makes
can
it
save
interesting,
time.
yeah, but what makes it interesting because I also talked to another person, where people can find us in a different podcast with Henry Go, and
Oh, it's a
yeah,
friend. Yeah.
yeah, and he does not do that too. He just takes a map, but before when he was younger, there's no phone, but he just brings a map and then brings his water bottle, and he just walks and walks and walks and walks, and he doesn't necessarily look into like the best spots to eat or all that, but he
Yeah.
just finds
Maybe
it.
it's good if you have a deadline and you're writing about places. And also if you have limited time in that area, so
Mm,
that's also uh, a practical way of doing it.
right.
But in my case, um, for example, I've been here for a year, I mean for 3 years, so I don't have that kind of mentality. Even though when I travel outside of Hanoi, almost every month I go somewhere outside of Hanoi, um, and I don't do that anymore. Like, oh, where to eat? I just like
Start
go
walking.
out for a walk. I stroll around, and then whatever I can find along the way there, I just enjoy whatever they have. So
That's, I wish I could do that,
you
maybe.
will
Yeah,
definitely, Sid. Yes.
definitely.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
it's
yeah.
a kind of process. The older you get,
Yeah. Maybe, or
the
maybe
more
if
adventurous you come. Or no, actually, the older you get, the lazier you become when it comes to researching where to eat.
maybe if I have like this luxury of time that I could spend like a
Yeah,
month,
true. Yeah, and time as well. Yeah,
that's when I can, you know what? I'm just gonna play it by ear and ask,
yeah,
ask
yeah,
around. But if I
yeah.
have like a deadline, then definitely ask, it would take more of searching, but less eating. Yeah.
Oh, but it also helps if you know someone. Like for example, if you ever visit Hanoi, you can go out. So it pays when you have a local friend in that area.
That's awesome. And hopefully, if ever I get to go, I don't know, I would definitely go to Vietnam for sure.
Mm.
We get to go around and eat a few places.
Yes,
It's
I have
for
some
sure.
favorite spots, local spots. Yeah.
This is a two-part question, and this is just for
Mhm.
me, not for everyone. Do you write do you have any kind of writing that is in relation to food?
Um,
Or usually
very
it's just about
few.
traveling or
Very few. I did. I wrote an essay. There was a time in the Philippines that a Polish blogger, food no blogger, bashed our food. That it was so shitty, and I and I wrote an essay on the variedness or the plurality of
Mhm.
our food from north to south. That your experience in Cebu food wise is an
It's
entirely different
different.
narrative when you are with Pangud up north.
Mhm.
And yeah, I but yeah, rarely. I used to write kitchen stories. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily food outside, but things that I made and I wrote about them. But rarely. I don't think I have the patience. It's difficult. I mean, food has. I mean, food making involves a lot of processes.
Mhm.
Like some, and I don't think I have the patience for that.
For
But yeah,
sure.
I might compete with the usage. Who knows?
You don't know. And I don't know where it goes from here, but I guess my way of this is just my way of recording food stories, from
Mm,
all over the world. And this at least 10 years from now, or some random person would search about lechon in the Philippines or food in Vietnam, they could probably come across this podcast.
yeah, true.
Yeah, and that's just one of my lucrative goals, I guess, when it comes to
Yeah,
making podcasts.
of
And because
that.
there's
Yeah.
just a there's a lot of food podcasts in the US, in Europe, but there's nothing. Like close to like only 5% that about food podcasts in Southeast Asia. And I guess I'm
Mm,
kind of like filling that void for now.
good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you so much, Jonah,
Thank
for
you.
indulging this podcast and telling just a really bit of sneak peek of your life in Vietnam. And as a traveler,
Mm,
last question: if you could have
mm,
any dish, any meal, whether you tried it or you haven't tried, what would it
mm.
be? And right now, if you could have anything right now, what would it be?
Oh,
I know it's lunchtime there. Probably you've eaten, but
yeah,
if you
it's
could
long time.
get anywhere from
Oh,
anywhere in the world.
oh, I just want to go back to Car. Car Market. Have a good 1 kilo of lechon all by myself. And then they have this
Sounds so good.
and also kinilaw. It's been a while. Kinilaw. Yeah, living in the city with no access to seawater. So hard to find fresh
Mhm.
ocean fish here. So yeah, kinilaw and a legit utan bisaya.
That's There's
Yeah.
Utan Bisaya. I have heard multiple answers of Utan Bisaya. I am
Yeah,
not I am
kabungka.
not a convert yet. I still don't know. I had my fair share of Utan Bisaya, but that was when I was a kid.
And then they
No.
were, and they don't have, they rarely, you can rarely find with the plethora of vegetables that they have here, you can rarely find moringa, like kamunggay in the market. It's so
That's
rare. Like,
needed.
we see, like, a group of Bisaya friends going out for a walk, and then we see a
Come, come.
moringa tree along the street, like,
We're gonna get it.
We go nuts, you know, see, and then we try to steal some stuff.
I wonder why. I wonder why.
I mean, it's just the. Well, you wonder why we're crazy about Utan
No,
Bisaya.
I wonder why. That too. But I wonder why there's not a lot of moringa there.
They have, yeah, they have some, but it seems like they don't use it in their dishes at all. It's
Um,
so rare to see it in the market. They use the seeds
mhm.
for some soup, but that's it, and that's so rare as well. They have a lot of alternatives for their
Oh,
basic vegetable soup, like gooseberry and mustard
I
and
see.
spinach. Yeah.
Here it's important too, but they usually put in capsules, not necessarily how we eat it in the Philippines.
And that one is very whitewashed.
Yeah, we don't want to have that. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. Where can they find you if people want to learn more about you? Where can they find
I
you?
got a vlog. I got on Instagram. My Instagram is backpacking with the book, and my blog is backpackingwiththebook.com.
Thank you so much, Jonah,
Of course,
and
that's
I
me.
hope to see you soon. Hope
Yeah,
and
hopefully come here.
yes,
I'll be your tour guide.
yes. Oh, and